Good morning, everyone. This is Alicia Sequeira with the CTC. I just wanted to let you know that we will begin shortly with today's training. Please make sure you follow the steps that are on the screen to ensure that you can participate throughout today's training. And we will begin here shortly after we finish providing some additional assistance to our attendees. Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. As a reminder, this is the session for the local streets and roads expenditure report technical training. My name is Alicia Sequeira. I am with the California Transportation Commission, and I am the program manager for this particular program here at the CTC. I am joined with our staff, our local streets and roads staff, Celeste Estevez, Cherry Zamora, and Zach Taylor, who is assisting for today, and Leon Bachian. So we're all here and available to provide assistance and to submit questions and ask questions. And we're going to go ahead and get through this right now. But one thing I kind of want to remind everyone is that this is an annual technical training. There have been no major changes to the reporting system, to our reporting guidelines, to the reporting requirements and details that we are asking you for. So really the first half of this is going to be an overview. As it says on the screen, we're going to do a schedule overview, program overview, preparation for reporting, the reporting detail that's required, and then we're going to go into the CalSmart live demonstration and navigation through CalSmart. And then we'll lightly touch on our frequently asked questions and the resources. But the bulk of today's training will be concentrated on the navigation through CalSmart and the type of information that we're looking for you to report and where you can find that and how to prepare. I will give intermittent breaks throughout the training in order for you to ask questions, and that'll be the time that we'll respond to questions if they're not being responded to in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand and ask a question live in the training. This is being recorded. We will be posting it online, and handouts for today's training are also available in your handout tab on your GoToWebinar dashboard. And so you're going to see a little tab that says handouts, and in there we want you to go in and download all of your information. So just to get started, this is the annual expenditure program schedule. And back in March 2021, after significant outreach and discussion with our jurisdictions and program stakeholders, we took the steps to adopt and amend the program guidelines that amended our program schedule. And so now you report December 1st of every year. This has not changed. This has been consistent actually since COVID-19 impacts and the pandemic hit. This is the alteration that we had made, and now we've stuck with it. It seems to work out better for everybody that we have this particular schedule now. And so with that, CalSmart is now open. We always open it in the middle of October, so it's been open for a little over a week now, and it will close December 1 at 11:59 p.m. And so that's the time that you have to go into the system and to take care of your expenditure reporting. So the Local Streets and Roads Program overview. As you know, in order to receive your funds, you have to adopt a project list, proposed list of projects by your board or city council, and submit to the commission within a certain time period. And we have to adopt that, and then the state controller's office will begin releasing funds to you on a monthly basis. Also, as a condition of this program, you are required to report to us, the commission, how the funds are being spent every year, and the status of those projects and the details of those projects in which program funds, so road maintenance and rehabilitation account, RMRA funds, are being spent each and every year. How do you want to prepare for this report? Preparing for your reporting is make sure that you're tracking your project-related expenditures and statuses. This means you want to verify that all reportable project expenditure related data and statuses have been selected and are identified based on the project activity that occurred within that fiscal year. So these are your questions that you want to ask yourself. Was the project active between July 1 and June 30th within that reporting year? Were there invoices paid using RMRA funds for work performed, and I really want you to pay attention to this, within the reporting year, within those dates? This means if you have invoices for work that was performed between July 1 and June 30, but you didn't pay it until August or September, you would still count that because the work occurred within the fiscal year. So the funds that are being spent and reported out on are still those funds related to what was done in the fiscal year. And so if the answer is yes to either of these questions, those details from those projects and those expenditures, they need to be included in the report. You also want to record any project list change. So if a project is no longer being funded, you need to be able to reflect that with RMRA funds. If it's been canceled, if it's been grouped together with other projects, we need to make sure that you're reflecting that. If there's been a scope change, locations have changed, the schedule changes, anything of that nature, this is when and where you're going to do that, okay? And again, it's only going to be for those projects that you either reported on in a previous year or you proposed for that reporting year. It's not going to be what you just submitted to us. People get really confused because you're reporting in a delay, right? You're reporting outside of that that fiscal year, and it can become a little confusing. That's, there we go. So what is your annual reporting detail? And you're going to say, Alicia, you keep repeating yourself on these dates and you keep saying the same information. And there's a reason why I keep doing this. And that is because this is the type of information that regularly either gets left out or is, you know, people get confused on what needs to be put in there. So I'm going to just keep repeating myself until it sticks. So for that, it's any local streets and roads program RMRA funds spent in the reporting year, spent for activity that occurred within the reporting year. If a jurisdiction has unspent RMRA funds by June 30th of the reporting fiscal year, you need to indicate what is the jurisdiction's intent for those funds in an upcoming fiscal year. And again, this is where we're talking about your accounting for all of your projects that were proposed, previously reported on, and we're just tracking where the intent of that fund is intended to go. These funds are in the program funds that you're receiving. There's a condition that is assigned to that, and that means that we have to have transparency and accountability, and this is us doing that, right? We're being very transparent in how the funds are being used and what you receive, and you're being held accountable by by reporting out on exactly what was done, and then your community and your stakeholders can say, hey, I can see where these funds are going. You're identifying the reporting detail continued. So using the CalSmart system, you're going to capture the following details, and we are going to go into how you do this step by step. But I just want you to like make a note on this page, save this page, because this is really where you want to start from. You want to identify your projects in the prior fiscal year that were relisted in the reporting year. So that means anything that you had reported in your expenditure report and then got relisted for that year's eligibility, you want to make note of that. You want to make sure that you're tracking those things. And so there's a way to download all of that information or export it. You want to identify prior fiscal year reportable project list, and that's in CalSmart. And then so prior reportable is the prior year's expenditure report, and then current fiscal year list of proposed projects for funding. That is the list that you had proposed for eligibility that year, right? And so we're going to talk through all of this. And then you want to make sure that you're making note of any newly added projects or newly proposed projects, how we refer to them. And this just means these are brand new projects that didn't appear before that are being added. So preparation for reporting on your funds. You want to make sure that any remaining RMRA funds from a prior year that were spent in the current reporting year, all of that's being accounted for. Funds spent from the RMRA apportionment received in the reporting fiscal year, that is directly being accounted for. And so, and you're tracking them, right? You don't forget the funds, just because you didn't use them in a fiscal year, they need to still roll over. They don't get to become something that you get to do whatever you want with after that year. There have been some people who think that that's the way it works. It's not the way it works. So we just want to make sure that you're correctly identifying these funds and you're tracking them accordingly. And something that we need to make very clear to everybody is that the funds are dispersed from the state controller to the jurisdictions on a monthly basis, but this does not start until September. So you guys get your first round of eligibility. You know, you come to us for your eligibility, and we adopt that August 1st, and you receive your first funds in September, but that's for the fiscal year. So September funding, that first disbursement, that is the revenues that were collected in July from the state. There's 6 to 8 weeks differential in the time that it takes to rectify the funds and then to disperse them. So you need to remember that. And then your final payment comes in August. And all of that needs to be attributed to the fiscal year that you're actually reporting on. RMRA expenditure activity summary. This is one of my favorites. I'll tell you what's not accepted. None. We spent money, funds were spent, and we're doing projects. That is not an acceptable summary. It needs to be a brief summary, but these summaries, regardless of your expenditure activity, regardless of how much you spent or how little you spent, it doesn't matter. We need to have a brief summary that says, you know, we worked on 5 projects, we completed 3, and we spent a total of this amount in the fiscal year. And that can be it. And then we go in there. Number one, it helps us create a narrative if we're asked anything, because we provide this information, the details that are being given to us from the data, we storyboard that. And then we also use your narratives that are being written in your voice so that we can help explain what's going on throughout the different jurisdictions. And so that's really good. It also helps us during the reviewing period to kind of have an idea of what we should be expecting to see in your reporting list anyways. So if you're saying you did 5 projects and you completed 3, and then we get in there and it shows that you completed 1 project and you only did 3, we're going to say, oh, something's off. Where's the miscommunication? Where's the misunderstanding? What's going on? And so then we're going to work with you to try and kind of have an understanding and figure out what the issue is. So it's just really important that you are being, you know, upfront, you're not doing the bare minimum, and you are giving us an actual explanation of what kind of happened in the fiscal year. And if you don't, we are going to hound you until you give us some sort of explanation. It is a talent we now have. So the next is all projects proposed in the reporting fiscal year need to be accounted for in the report. And that does mean all. So if you proposed these projects, every single one of them, and then that project list changed, you need to just account for it. Don't try to just not acknowledge the project or skip or ignore the project. You still need to account for it. All previously reported projects not yet completed need to be accounted for in the report. Again, this is just anything that is still ongoing, in progress, carried over, forecasted. If these terms don't make any sense to you, I promise you they will, because we'll be going over terminology shortly. But this is what you need to kind of focus on. You do have an opportunity to update a completed project to continue to report out on that. And that's really for when, let's say, you completed a project within the fiscal year the prior year, but you haven't done final closeout, you haven't done the final invoicing and payout for the project. And so after that closeout of that year, or the end of the prior fiscal year, you've done all of those things. Now you're going to tell us what's the remaining amount that was spent, right? If there was additional RMRA funds spent, inform us of that. You're not going to be able to change dates. You're not going to be able to change any of the detail, but you can update the funding amount for the project. So what is required of you? Again, if a project became active within the reporting year in which the RMRA funds were spent but had not been previously reported on nor proposed in the reporting fiscal year, it must be added to the expenditure report. So we have the ability, so you can add a new project, and this is where you would do that. The wonderful thing about this program, the statute and the program guidelines, is that this allows you to be flexible throughout the year. So if you have priority changes, if you have a project that needs to come in and it has more funding or it's more critical, and it differs from what was already proposed, that's fine. As long as it meets the requirements of the program and eligibility requirements of the project types that you're allowed to fund, you can do that. You just need to be transparent and add that information in. You need to identify project activity that occurred within the reporting fiscal year and which costs were incurred. Again, repeating myself for like the fourth time today, 7/1 to 6/30. If there was activity during that time, it was invoiced, and you don't pay it until after the 6/30 date, right? That's okay. You're still going to report on that. You're going to record the reporting of your fiscal year RMRA apportionments received. And this is between September and August. And we are going to walk you through where you can find that information. And the state controller's office tracks it September through August. They refer to that as your fiscal year apportionment. They've sent letters to every jurisdiction's finance department letting them know this should be counted as the fiscal year apportionment for the total year. If your finance department says something else, have them reach out to us or to the state controller's office directly, because that's not accurate, right? It needs to be what was received between September and August. It has to be. That's the only way we count it. So here's the terminology I was referring to on an earlier page. I don't feel like I need to get into too much detail. It's pretty self-explanatory. We have this on all of our handouts, the training slides, everything. So you have completed, and again, that's anything that completed the bulk of its work. It became usable to the public, open to the public, and major invoice work is done, right, by June 30th. And progress is anything that was active but not completed within the fiscal year. So just because it was awarded, if their actual work calendar construction, if no invoiceable work took place as of July 1 or between July 1 and June 30, then it doesn't matter. like you don't get to count that as active, okay? Just because it was awarded. It needs to have actually started. Invoiceable work needs to have occurred. Carried over, that means it wasn't active at all within the year, and this is where you would call it carried over because it's going to be taking place, you're projecting it's going to take place in the next fiscal year. Forecasted is any projects not active that are intended to take place in 2 or more fiscal years out, right? So, and we had to come up with this terminology because at the very beginning of the program, we were getting proposed project lists that were like 5-10 year capital plans, right? Your construction management plans for 5 to 10 years. And that's not what was intended for this program. And so it just made it look like you guys were anticipating doing, you know, so many projects in a single year that were just not feasible financially, with manpower, labor, like it just wasn't going to be doable. So we came up with the forecasted terminology so that this will help better convey what your intentions are. We don't want to mislead anybody. And then no longer RMRA funded. This is just a project could have been proposed that was intended to use RMRA funds. And for some other reason, it's now going to use other source funds, or the project has to be canceled altogether because of another issue, or you're delaying it indefinitely. You don't want to keep it on your list because you may have other priorities that come down the road. And so you just want to get it removed. I mean, it can always come back later, but this is a good way for you to kind of clear and clean things out. So here are the examples based on the activity types that we were talking about. So here's one. Your project was active within the reporting year. This is July 1, June 30. It's not yet completed. It incurred costs within the fiscal year to be paid with RMRA funds. The project was invoiced for the work that occurred within that fiscal year, but funds may not have been paid until after the fiscal year closed. And then here's your expenditure detail that you would be capturing. So the project status would equal in progress. The project start would be somewhere within that fiscal year. Your estimated completion schedule, that has to be after the fiscal year for that you're reporting in, right? Your estimated total cost, this is all funding costs. So if you're using your general fund, other measure funds, whatever it is, plus RMRA, you're going to give us what that total amount is. And then you're going to identify specifically your RMRA funds expended based on invoiced work from July 1 to June 30. And then we have future fiscal year RMRA funds dedicated to the project that's in progress. I personally am not a fan favorite. Like, I despise having to have this information, that future fiscal year RMRA fund information in there, because it becomes very confusing. And not for us. Like, I understand what you're trying to say sometimes, but what happens is, as users in the jurisdictions, you guys may have changes in staff, turnover, right? And they may not understand why you put future fiscal year in there. And this could just be saying that because you're allowed to do this per statute, a jurisdiction can say, hey, we advanced a project using other fund sources, eligible fund sources, this year because we didn't have enough in RMRA available to do it. But we're doing it based on the fact that we know that we're going to get so much in the next year. And so we're going to reimburse ourselves with the RMRA funds from a future year, and then we're going to move forward, right? And we're going to report on that. But what happens is that people think that they've reported on it, and then they forget to report on it in a future year, or it somehow gets double reported, and now you're reporting more than what you actually spent, and it can become very complicated and very convoluted. We put it in there because it was a major request and a major push, but I just, be cognizant. If you're going to use it, be cognizant, and it can get messy. So just, that's all I'm going to say about that. We'll just go through another example really quickly. I know we have some raised hands. I know we have some questions. We're going to get to the question tab here shortly. So the project reported as complete in the prior fiscal year, but the final closeout, acceptance, and final payment of the RMRA funds occurred in the reporting year. And so your additional RMRA funds spent in the reporting fiscal year on that completed project, this is where you're going to be capturing that, okay? The total project cost, and I cannot stress this enough, your total project cost cannot be less than the RMRA funds that were spent, right? So it's got to be, you know, higher than that amount. And we're going to catch it, and then we'll be talking to you about it. It just, if you catch it up front, it makes things so much easier for all of us. And then this is just an example of a carried over. And I don't want to get too much into this, but this kind of tells you like a project was awarded in April, but it didn't start until July. And so it has to be considered as carried over because no invoiceable work occurred prior to the end of the fiscal year. And then here's just a list of everything I provided you. I am not going over this at all. I just want you guys to make sure that you flag this, you save this page, and you make sure that this is the kind of information that you're paying attention to. And now we're going to go to our questions. I know we have a raised hand. Okay, let me see. Sorry, guys. Okay, sorry, we had two mics on at the same time. Somebody just turned on my camera. Hi, this is me. Rhonda, can you hear me? Okay, do we have any other raised hands? All right. Let's see. Any questions that anybody hasn't had answered yet? All right, we have another raised hand.
Cornelio Datuin, you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So for the reporting of the costs, do we include like, you know, admin costs?
Yeah, so you are going to include the if you're including that as your RMRA, like, are you asking if that's your expenditure costs? Are you asking as your total cost? Because you have the ability to pay your admin overhead, some of that, if you can tie it directly to those purposes, you have the ability to use RMRA funds for that as well.
Okay, yeah, we do have some admin costs.
Yeah, so, but yeah, you definitely want to include that in there. If that's going into your total project cost and everything that you've budgeted for that project, you do want to include that.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Do we have anyone else?
Charles Cable, you are unmuted and may ask a question. Charles, you are self-muted right now. You can unmute yourself and ask a question. Oh.
Okay, so it looks like maybe we don't have anyone else with, oh, I guess we do, yeah.
Katie Schroeder, you are unmuted and may ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Awesome. So I'm still gathering data and everything, and we've had a few people that have changed hands in reporting this. So like I said, I'm digging deep. I'm really trying to figure it out. But if I find errors in previous years that were reported incorrectly, how do I resolve that moving forward? Or how do I go back, or do I just absorb it in this year? Like, how do I deal with that?
It sort of depends on what the errors are. If they're super minor and they're things that can be easily absorbed without major corrections being needed, and you can kind of rectify it by, like, let's say they're ongoing projects that are still being reported on year after year, and they just had incorrect information in there from a prior year, and you can update that in your current reporting year. That's a super easy fix, right?
Yeah.
The problem that we have is when there's an over, and it's not even the under reporting, it's the over reporting of RMRA funds being reported as spent in a fiscal year. And then the next year, somebody comes to us and says, oh, wait, we didn't really spend that 500,000 on that project. And so now we did this project over here, and that's where that money's going. But now we don't have enough RMRA in the system that's showing in the system to say, like, that's what we did, right?
Yeah,
And
gotcha.
we have
Totally.
this money. And so that's
Okay.
where we have the problems. And the issue is too, is that this information, so like what you're sending to us is a far greater detailed report than what you send or what your finance department, and this is where it gets tricky, right? Because our report kind of requires both the public works side of the house and the finance house to work together.
Yeah, I am the finance house in this case. So as the reporting, it's, at least for here, it is in finance only, pulling data, obviously.
Yeah, and then you have to get the information of the specifics. Like if you're having if it's a completed project, there's specific outputs and outcomes that need to be reported on.
Sure. I work with other people. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so in on the state controller's annual streets and roads report, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit different. It's not as detailed. It's not project specific. It's very, very different. It's you're categorizing your funds being spent versus detailing and tying it to specific projects.
Gotcha. So overall, as long as, I mean, like I said, I'm still trying to figure it all out, and I'm having just some difficulty reconciling stuff, but that's probably just on me. I'm sure it was done fine, but just in case. So if it's rather insignificant on a project we're continually reporting on multiple years, it can most likely just be absorbed in this year if it was underreported.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
if you just let us know, know every time, like if there's like a major issue, you guys just let us know and we will work with you and do what we can. And sometimes that also requires us to reach out to the state controller's office and see how much of a difference that is and how big of an issue it is in compared to what you reported to them the year prior and how they would go about fixing those issues and rectifying it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course. Anytime.
Rafael Casillas, you are unmuted and may ask your question.
Good morning, this is Rafael. I had asked a question about the forecasting, if that's allowed, and it said that it is. I guess now just to understand it a little more specific, how many years out can you forecast a project?
So in the very beginning, I mean, like I said, we were seeing like the 5-10-year plans coming through. I don't recommend that. If you're forecasting out a project really far, just know that you're causing yourself way more work on your end here with us. Because every year you're going to need to, either way, you still have to send us a submittal of eligible projects that are being adopted and proposed every year. You're going to have to report out on these projects and account for these projects every year. until the project is completed and closed out. So it's just, I mean, really, it's going to be up to you. The other thing is it becomes sort of a perception thing, and that's up to your individual jurisdiction. I am so sorry. There is a very loud truck working behind me right now. So if anybody is having a hard time hearing, I do apologize. But the other thing is perception. So for your jurisdiction, do they want to have the same projects showing up on a report year after year after year? And how does that look to your constituency? Does it look like you guys aren't doing anything? You know, so it's just, you want to make sure that you're doing everything to help yourselves properly convey what you're trying to do and what you are actually accomplishing without, you know, causing yourself too much work or causing confusion for your constituency as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, and then I guess just the other part to that is just, is there a maximum dollar amount that we can accrue?
I'm sorry, can you say it again? A maximum dollar amount that you can
Accrue, like let's say we forecast out X number of years, is there a maximum to that dollar amount or the fund?
There isn't a maximum in the sense of, so like, let's just say your individual jurisdiction averages, you know, $1 million a year from the program. You can project out that over the next 2 fiscal years, you're going to get $2 million. And so you're forecasting out that you're going to spend $2 million on a specific project that's 2 years out. So you're reserving your funds for that purpose. And that's fine. You know, you can do that. I think the thing to remember is that the future forecasting of projects, I think, was more intended for the jurisdictions that receive like $5,000, $10,000, $30,000 a year, that can do very little with those funds, because the purpose of the program is to ensure that, you know, deferred maintenance is being addressed, immediate issues with high priority and high need are being addressed quicker and more promptly, rather than being delayed for reserve purposes in order to deliver a larger project down the road, right? So it's just, again, it's remembering the intent of the program and understanding what maybe the priorities are and where these things sort of stemmed from. But it's allowable. I'm not telling you it's not. I'm just, you want to be cognizant of those things.
True, that's understood. And I guess, let's say that using that example of the $1 million, if I wanted to forecast one project out and have some funds, can I go ahead and, let's say, spend the 750,000 and then leave 25 or 250,000 for future forecasted project?
I mean, essentially you could. Like that's something you totally could do. And then, so you would say, this is what I'm intending to spend on the project in future RMRA funds. And then let's say when those future funds come in, you decide that there's another project that has more priority and it needs that 250. You need to clear that future fiscal year amount, because like, you're not going to be spending it now, not on that project at least.
Right.
And you have the right to do that. You have the right to move your fund.
Okay. And is there any, this forecasting, is there literature or any kind of information or a memo, tech memo that's going to be released in reference to it, or has there been?
So it's just in the guidelines. We touch on it in the guidelines. We touch on it in the eligibility report or eligibility fact sheet. And we also touch on it in this training. And I believe statute also identifies, so, and we'll go over where the statute can be found, Streets and Highways Code 2030. And you'll get in there and you'll see where it actually references future fiscal year funds may be used.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course. All right, we have 2 more. I'm gonna let us go until 10:15, and then we need to get into the live training, okay?
Domingo Gonzalez, you are unmuted and available to speak right now. Ask your question.
I believe you kind of answered the question. We had, when we first started, put some projections on pavement management preservation projects. From what I'm hearing is we could delete those projects to make it less cumbersome on the reporting. Is that what I'm hearing? I just want to confirm.
Only if you're not intending on spending your funds on it.
So I was hoping to kind of make it more of a generic area. We were specific on pavement preservation areas. And since then, we've done a pavement study, which has kind of altered that program. So I'm thinking about kind of deleting some of the old projects and establishing a new project that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, so that's something that's fine that you can do. You can also do a consolidation of those projects where you're rolling all of that data in, and then you're gonna like kind of clean it up a bit. And so all the projects are again being accounted for without it appearing as though you deleted a bunch of projects. You're gonna roll them into one big one and then kind of change the title and give a more broad scope, and location can be a little bit more broad, so you're not being super specific. Because the problems that we had in the past, and we still have, is that we see projects being named after specific locations and streets. And then what happens is those streets locations change, and then it looks like that project then all of a sudden disappeared. Whereas a location change can be considered a partial scope change. And it won't appear as though you're completely altering your list. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just not sure how to consolidate them at this
But we'll
point.
go over that.
Okay, I
And,
appreciate it. Thank you.
and if I don't go over that in like my examples that I have that I'll be walking through, you can contact one of the team members and we'll be able to walk you through it as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course, thank you.
Dan Eichstadt, you're unmuted and able to ask your question.
Thank you for the presentation. So we have a project that's been delayed, but we have design cost. It'll go into construction in the next month. Can we submit those design cost and admin costs for reimbursement? Thanks.
So this is not a reimbursement program. And so you already have the funds, they're already sitting in your accounts. It's up to your jurisdiction if they're allowing you to pay for your design and admin costs using the RMRA if they're funding it that way. We don't approve it or deny that. And so that's sort of an issue. And I'm so happy actually you said it, because we get this question a lot, and it's a misunderstanding of how the program works. The funds are already there for you to use. You don't come in for a reimbursement. No one has to approve that invoice and say that's an eligible cost for you. But
Okay.
You can report it if they allow you to use it. You can definitely report on that project and say, hey, this is what we used our funds on for this stage of the project, and we have ways for you to report on a project for both pre-construction purposes, which can be like design, admin, etc., and then for construction. And you can break it up into the two phases.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course, not a problem. All right, I think, are we done on hands? All right. Okay, so now we're going to jump into CalSmart. So this is the California Multimodal Application and Reporting Tool, CalSmart. This is what the very first page is going to look like when you get in. And this is the only part that I'm going to walk you through with slides. Everything else is going to be a live demonstration. So something that you have to remember, CalSmart is the only acceptable submittal method that we have. You cannot send it in the mail. You can't send it using an Excel spreadsheet. There's nothing else. This is the only database that it's allowed for or from. You're going to be reporting your fiscal year expenditure reporting cycle. It is now open in the system. You're going to see a message that tells you it's open, so you're good to go. If you are not registered and you're brand new to doing this, you're going to go to the CalSmart website to create an account. And if you haven't done this yet, please go into your GoToWebinar dashboard to the Handouts tab and download the handouts, because in your handouts version, you're going to see some of what we're going to be discussing in the live. You're also, you can select the links that are embedded in here and it'll take you directly to the CalSmart website. So please go ahead and do that. Something that's really unique about CalSmart, which we really like, is that each agency can have multiple registered users. But there's a caveat there. You have multiple registered users, but everybody has to have their own individual email being registered individually, okay? And one user can only access one agency. You cannot access multiple agencies. So this is really big for our consultants. They're the ones who tend to have some struggles with this, because they will represent a lot of you guys, and then they register once and hoping to get access to all their jurisdictions. So here's your CalSmart login page. If your login is CalSmart users, log in using the email and password that was used when you registered. If you have 3 failed attempts, you are going to be locked out. We do not get a notification when you are locked out. You end up by having to track one of us down, contact the program, and ask for help for us to go in and unlock it. So if you have 2 failed attempts, please, please, please just stop what you're doing and hit the reset button for your password and go from there. But if your account is locked, please send an email to the LSR website and we will go ahead and reset it for you. But again, then you're dependent on us being able to see it, get in there and unlock it for you. Whereas just be proactive. Once you have a second failed attempt, just go in and fix it yourself. So then that way you don't have to wait for us. If you're not a current CalSmart user, you're going to select the register button that was at the bottom of the screen. And this is the page that you're going to see and all of the information that you're going to be asked to provide. You're going to see that there's other programs that are in here too. When it's asking you the program that you're registering for, if you are not involved in the state of good repair, if you are not using in someone who reports on any other SB1 programs that are ran through and overseen by the CTC that require the reporting, which also requires an electronic project programming request. That means that you're getting reimbursements through Caltrans for these projects, right? If you don't do any of that, don't select any of those. Only select Local Streets and Roads program. Because if you select any of those and you don't do any of that, you are going to get really confused when you start getting emails about reporting that has nothing to do with this program. And you're going to contact us asking us about reporting, and people get really nervous and they're like, oh, we haven't reported on this yet. And it's like, well, it has nothing, like, you don't have anything to do with that. That's not a program that you are involved with. So just remember that, okay? And then it shows you the password that you have to confirm it. Make sure that you're using the right symbols, eligible symbols, and set up for the passwords. Then you're going to hit submit. Your registration email verification, it's an account request email. You need to make sure that you do not ignore this, that this doesn't go to spam, and you hit the please click here to complete the registration process. You have to hit that, because if you don't hit that, we will never receive the request to approve. It'll never come to us. And so we can't approve you at all. And then once you have been approved by us, you will get an account approval email, right? Just letting you know everything is good to go. So now we are going to get into the live CalSmart presentation. That's not it. Hold on. Okay, so here is the login information. Here's everything that I was just talking about. This is our test site. So as you see in red, there is a site that says test on there. Please note, that's not exactly what you're going to see when you're in the live site. But so here's mine. Please no one really email me. That's personal. But here you go. So here I am. I am registered for the purposes of this training as a City of Torrance. And what you're going to see is the current dashboard. In order to get into whatever I'm trying to do right now, I need to hit current program and go down, and I'm selecting local streets and roads program. And as you can see, it's telling me in the system, and again, just for this training, we have it as November 1st instead of December 1st, but it's telling me that the system is currently accepting proposed project list submittals. It needs to be reset to expenditure report. And so this actually should say expenditure reporting. And let's see if it doesn't. All right, there we go. So it is letting me do it. So, and so we're gonna go in here from the dashboard. Sorry, my mouse is being funky. Let's go back. So we're gonna select expenditure reporting. And when we select expenditure reporting, what you're gonna see is create expenditure report, manage expenditure reports, and view expenditure report projects. And that's wonderful. And that's exactly what you want to see. But one more time, I want to go back to the dashboard for local streets and roads. And I want to show you this help in resources tab. You're going to click on that. And this isn't exactly what you're going to see in the live. Again, this is just in the test version. But in the live version, you are going to see any training materials that we've put together to aid and assist you throughout. They're all in there. All of our information is in there. And we've made it a one-stop shop for you to really ease through the process. So make sure that you're using that help and resources tab. So now I'm going to go back up here on the top right corner. You see it says dashboard, submittals, reporting. I'm going to select reporting. And remember how I told you, you want to make sure that you prep yourself for the reporting process. So what I'm going to do is go into my manage expenditure reports. I can do one of two things. I can come over here, look at my most recent year that I submitted, select on that, because this just keeps all the basic information, and I'm going to select create PDF. And then I can open my file. And what you're going to see in here is that it's just giving me all of the contact information that was put on the intake, what my summary was. And then here's some of my most basic project detail, which is just, this is how much I spent, these are the projects, these were the statuses, right? If you want and need more extensive detail, this is also going to tell you how much money that you had received. Oh Lord, this is going quick. How much you received, how much you have remaining over, how much you reported as spent in the year. So all of that's in there. And so that's one option for you to get last year's reporting detail. The other way that you can do it is by back to that reporting, you're going to hit view expenditure report projects. And you're going to come here. It's only going to show you City of your individual agency because that's all you have access to. And you're going to hit fiscal year 2021. Apply, and then you can hit your export list to Excel. And once you've done that, it doesn't want to open because I feel like it's messing with my emotions. No. There we go. And what you'll see here is all of the specific detail that you've included, everything from your project start date, your project description, the project type. I mean, absolutely everything is going to be in this version. I like doing this version for the simple fact that it's something that you can adjust, customize. You can add in your most current information and show your own changes in there, track your changes. So this is a really good way to go about it. And it's really, like I said, it's one of the best ways, I think, to kind of do it, again, because you can customize it. You can organize it, put it in specific order that works for you, and then you can add in other projects and make it very specific. So then that way, when you go through the system to do your reporting, it's all going to be in there, and you're ready to go. So that's looking for the prior year's reporting detail, and then to get the most current or the fiscal year that you're reporting on to get that year's proposed project list. You're going to come here, and again, you can do one of two things. You can either go to manage fiscal year proposed project list, select on that year's. So here you go. This is 21-22 proposed project list. And then you can either create a PDF, and it's going to give you the same basic detail and information, or you go back to the submittal tab and you're going to hit view proposed projects. You'll hit 21-22, apply, and then you can export out. And again, now this is going to give you all of the full detail that you provided. All right. And you want to make sure that you are tracking that information, combining anything that needs to be combined from your prior year's reporting list. If it was relisted, identify that. An ongoing project that's being reported out on year after year, and kind of combine that into your expenditure detail that got put out, and start filling in the information for those projects too. And just making sure that you're keeping track of all of it. So that's for there. And then to find out how much specifically you have spent, or not spent, but received from the state controller's office, you're going to go to the state controller's website. You're going to hit state and local from their page, their homepage. Then you're going to hit local government, and you're going to scroll down, and you're going to select apportionments. And we'll scroll down even more. And again, these links are all available under the resources tab. And then you're going to come out to road maintenance and rehabilitation account, cities, SB1. If you're a city, if you're a county, you'll select county. And we want to look at 21-22 because that's the year that we're reporting on. And we want to look at year to date. And just again, to remember, I got an email, but just to remember, your remittance advice, you see that it's September to August. That's everything that's in there. So then we're going to hit year to date. And what you'll see in here, it's really zoomed in. So what you'll see in here, again, it goes September to August. What I want to find. Lord. This hates me. Okay, I can't make it work. It's like locked. And I'd have to do enable. Okay. So here we go. City of Torrance, and what it's going to show is how much I received per month. And then here's the total amount that it's saying I received in that fiscal year. So what I want to do is make note of that total amount, because I'm going to need to input this information into the system. And what I really want you to do is, because of what we ask for in the system, is I want you to look at exactly how much you received from September to July, total that up, and then total up how much you received, I'm sorry, September to June, total that up, and then put together exactly what you received in July and August and put a total of that together, right, to get the final amount. Because when you get into the system to do your reporting and you're doing our intake, create expenditure report. So like after you've gotten all your information, you go back into the reporting dashboard and you select create expenditure report. You're going to come in here, and one of the things that you're going to input in is like, what was your original RMRA estimate? To find that information, you're going to go to the California Local Government Finance Almanac at californiacityfinance.com. You're going to come down here to the Local Streets and Roads Funds, PUDA SB1, and then you're going to select where it says Transportation Funding Sources. You're going to select Local Streets and Roads estimates, and what you'll see in there, it says it has fiscal year 21-22 and 22-23. Remind you, these estimates are going to have been updated since the last time you had reported on them, but it's still something that is eligible for you to use, and you can go in, select this, and then find out what your estimates were and find them here. The other option you have is to go back and look at what you submitted for eligibility in your resolution, because 9 times out of 10 you guys identified the estimated amount in that as well. So just a couple of options. So for me, for the purpose of this, we have 8,161. So that's how much they're saying that they were estimated to receive originally. And then for the first portion of the fiscal year that we look at, or what was actually made within what's considered the calendar fiscal year from September to June, it is the following amount. And then the second amount, the second portion, that July, August amount, I'm going to input that here. And I hit enter. Don't hit enter, because then you're going to get your little errors. And then we're going to put in what you're going to see is like without interest and then with interest. And right now I haven't included any interest in here. If you are incurring an interest or accruing interest, you need to identify that here on these funds, because those funds and the interest that's accrued, you have to use that interest amount just for the same purposes or in the same manner for the same eligible purposes that you're using the initial fund that you received. So you're gonna, like, this is my favorite, I just always put in 1,000 just for the purposes of this, so that you can see the system just automatically is going to tally everything. So 2.936 on the without interest, 2.937 on the with interest. And then here is my fiscal year remaining amount from the prior fund balance. We have 3.9. You know, some, not all, but some of you informed us that you guys are tracking the interest and you're tracking the funds and keeping them separated by year. That's fine. So that's why we have this field in here of the interest accrued on the remaining fund balance from the prior year. You don't have to separate it out if that's not something you're already doing. This is for the ones who are already doing that, because that's the way that they keep their books. It is not for everybody. And that's fine. And so I'm going to leave that blank. So then we come in here and you're going to see everything ends up by getting tallied. Down here, it's combined available, 6.8 million without interest, 6.871 million without interest, 6.872 with the interest included. So now this is going to tell me how much I'm going to put in here, right? How much I'm saying I spent in the fiscal year. If I, and this is just a good thing to show, if I put in here that I spent 6.9 million instead, the system is automatically going to give me an error that says your current fiscal year expenditures cannot exceed your total available funds. The amount, so I can't even move past this page because now I've put in too much. For lots of fun, we're just going to do 2.5 million because it seems to be really easy for me to do that. Your average network PCI, so only if you're doing projects that aren't specific to the road maintenance that's identified, if you have an 80 or above. If you have an 80 or above PCI, you can concentrate on other transportation related projects other than rehab, repair, safety, those types of things that are identified as eligible projects. If you didn't do that, then don't worry about inputting your PCI. It's not relevant. You do not need to upload additional documents, but if you would like to, you're more than welcome to do so. But here is the other part that you are required to do. It's a summary of your fiscal year Armory activity and project priority changes. And so this is where I'm going to say we performed 3 projects and completed 1, spending a total of 2.5 million in Armory funds. Super easy. This just really helps us identify that, like, this is something that we can identify, track, and make reference to in comparison when we're looking at the information that you input. So now I'm going to hit next, and this is going to take me directly to my 2021 expenditure report projects and my from the prior year, and then the 2021 completed projects. I can show my completed projects here. I'm only going to do this if I have additional funds to report. If I don't have additional funds to report on these projects, I'm not going to bother expanding that. But what you're going to see is if you expand that, you have an ability to select update, and I can update additional costs on here. I don't want to do that for the purposes of right now. And I'm just going to go into the expenditure report projects. I have to account for all of these, absolutely all of these. These are required. So I'm going to select update on the very first one. And now it's going to show me my proposed projects from that year. As you see, I do not have the Torrance paving project appearing in my proposed projects for 21-22. So I don't need to link anything. And I'm going to hit skip linking proposed projects and go directly to my reporting detail. And what I'm going to show in here is that, it shows that I was identifying pre-construction, right? And I reported on that. I can scroll through, I can see how much I did in that fiscal year and how much I said I reported on it in that fiscal year. All of the detail. Is there anything in here that I need to identify? Well, when I do pre-construction, I'm not required to identify. Something just happened to my computer. Oh no. That's not fun. And this is what happens when we have a live training. It came back. Okay. So this is what happens. You can see everything that you identified before. So in a pre-construction project, you're not required to identify specific locations. You're not required to identify your additional project elements. All of that's a part of it, right? So, but now for me, this project is now in construction. So I spent all this money in pre-construction last year, and now this project's in construction. So I'm going to switch it to construction, and I'm going to identify, we had some ADA curb ramp existing and new that we did. We did some bike lane rehab, pavement rehab, and striping was done. And then I can select, here's everything on there, right? Sidewalks, and let's just say I had some sidewalk existing work that we prepared as well. Or not, I don't have to identify that. But anyways, so you see all the options that you have here, and then you can also select other if nothing quite fits that. And then what I see people do a lot is additional information. And I love it when they do this, because let's say for the purpose of this, right, this project was done throughout the fiscal year and it completed in FY 21-22, but final closeout was not completed until, let's say, September 2022. And we're done, right? I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. We're good. So then I have my useful life. I don't have to change anything on my useful life. I don't have to change anything on my state senate or US con, but I do have to update my location. And so I can say like Torrance Boulevard from I didn't need to do all that, but okay. From point A to point B. Whatever detail I can put in there. And in here, I'm going to say, yes, sustainability. And then I can identify what sustainable products that we use, materials that we use, things like that, or methods that we used for the paving. And I can hover over. I'm not using a regular mouse, so I'm sorry this is being wonky. But if you hover over the question mark, it's going to tell you examples of what those technologies or what those additional elements could be, so that you can provide a little bit more detail if you wanted to. And so now I'm going to hit save and continue. And again, like, look at all of this. You have your related projects, proposed projects. This allows you to know that this is ongoing reported project. It's continuing. Okay. And so now it's going to take me to my project status and expenditure. And in here, for my priority status, as you saw, I said it was completed. And right here, it's not going to say that I spent any funds previously on this project, because it's tracking it by its phase. So that can be a little complicated. There's other ways that we can report on it that'll allow it to show the total amount that you spent for that specific project from RMRA, and we can do that. Just let us know if that's how you want us to do it. But it's just, you have several different ways that you technically could report out on these things. And so you just let us know what would be easiest and preferred for yourself. And so here in 21-22, I need to come down to accrued RMRA costs expended in the reporting fiscal year. And I'm going to say that I spent 1.5 million on this. Actually, you know what? No. We're just going to go 2 million here. All right, so I spent 2 million on this particular project. I'm not going to identify future fiscal year funds because I don't need to at this point. That's not my intention. So I'm going to skip down, and what I am required to do is show a project start date. So this project had to have started in June of 20, or July 1 of 2021 at minimum, right? So I'm just going to do that. 7/15, 2021. That's not correct. My original project cost estimate for this project is going to be, let's say, 4.5 million. My completion date for this project, we're going to say that was 6/15/2022. And my actual total project cost at this point, like, because we know project costs are going up and estimates are off, we're going to go higher. So 5 million. And I can identify what those additional information for project costs are. So this is a good place for you if you want to identify the other funding sources, you can do that here. And so now I'm going to go in here and I can say my total miles paved. And we're going to go in and I'm going to say 3 miles paved. We did 15 ADA curb ramps. And again, this is construction, maintenance, and rehab, right? And that's all we're identifying here. And my paving and striping, we're going to say that was 3 miles. And then here's new, right? So here, anything that you put in was new. And I had identified that we had done some new ADA curb ramps that didn't previously exist. So I'm going to say that that was 10 of those. And did I have any new widened paving, anything that I can identify as new, not pre-existing. And all I had was the 10. I can add in any additional information here to help clarify what my outputs were. And this is a really good thing to do, and I recommend doing it if you know what you want to put in there. It just always helps to clarify things. Now I'm going to hit save and continue, but I can't because I messed up on purpose. But I messed up for the purpose of this, to show you that you can input the number, but if you don't click the box on the side for that outcome, it's not going to allow you to submit it and complete the page. There we go. So now you have to make sure that you've checked those. Then we're going to come back down and we're going to try again. That's a really good thing about this system, is that it is going to help you ensure accuracy. So now I'm going to update my 37th Street sidewalk, and as you see from the 2021 expenditure report, I hit update. It takes me here to the 2021 or 21-22 proposed, and it's showing me what I selected on the prior page. And now I see the 37th Street sidewalk is there as well. So I want to identify that. I'm going to select that project, and I'm going to hit link projects down at the bottom. Project ID, just to clarify, that's just for you guys. If you want to put your own project ID in there because it helps you internally with your jurisdiction track and office track, that's totally fine. You have the ability to do so. So project type is still road maintenance and rehabilitation. I had identified it as construction. And now I just need to go back through and identify that all the correct project descriptions here in the box have been included. So I have sidewalk and/or crosswalk installation new. Well, here's the thing. New installations are not solely funded with this program. So there should be some repair that's a part of that as well. And the other thing is, like, if you're doing a complete streets project, it has to be done in conjunction with another type of eligible project. And so a lot of times what we see are like these complete street types projects are being performed as a safety project as well, because they're improving pedestrian and bicyclist safety. So we're going to do ADA, ramp rehab, existing, and that looks good to me. So again, I'm just going to double check everything else. And then you can identify more for location. You can provide, so a lot of times what we see, if there's like a major street in an area that's getting a rehab, sometimes people will say this is an industrial street, this is residential area near whatever school, something like that, just to really help your constituency better identify exactly where things are. Because a lot of times what I know is tempted to be done is to say zone 1, maintenance zone 1, maintenance zone 2. Like the general public, most people are not going to know what that is. And so this is just a way that makes it easily identifiable. So here I'm going to select complete streets down for my additional project elements. And what you can see is that in the construction, because it was in progress in a prior year, and you can select view to have an idea of what's in there. I just say, like, please be careful when you do that, because if you go into the view and you accidentally like delete that version, it is going to wreak havoc in your current reporting. And it's supposed to lock you out so that you can't delete it. What it does is it doesn't delete it from the old original record, but what it does is it deletes it from the record that you're currently in, and it can cause major problems in the reporting system, and it won't allow you to complete it. So just be careful if you jump in there. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, and because I actually have complete streets and it's in the project, I'm going to say yes. And then save and continue. And for here, I'm going to change this to completed. And this is going to be, how much did I say I spent? No, in total. All right, so I'm saying I spent 500,000 in this project. As you see, the project start date is completely blacked out. I cannot adjust this because this was previously reported on. I can put in and adjust the original project cost in here, and so we're going to say that the original project cost for this was $1 million. That was the original project cost estimate, because now that I'm saying it's completed, this is why you're going to see project cost estimate is actually required, because you know what your original estimate was, and now you're going to know what your actual total project cost was. My completion is going to be there we go. And my total project cost, I'm going to say it was 1.5 million. And again, I can add information in here. And so I did rehab of 88 curb ramps, 5, select. I also did sidewalks and crosswalks repair for the miles. And so, like, if you can configure your linear feet into, you know, what it would look like for miles, a fraction of a mile, whatever it is, we need you to try and do that to the best of your ability to be as close as possible. And we're just going to say this was 2 miles. Then I have the other one in here. New. And the new was like another mile worth of that. And now I hit save. And as you see, it's taking me directly back to the final project for project reporting to continue to report. And all I have is the rehabilitation and road maintenance project, traffic control devices. And I'm going to report on that. Or actually, you know what, for funsies, oh, I messed up. Well, now you guys are going to see how we fix this. All right. So let's say I want, instead of hitting report directly on this, I want to select this as no longer RMRA funded. And so now I've identified it as no longer RMRA funded. I have nothing else that I need to put in here. Everything is going to just be the same. Oh, I have to include my US congressional. Just an FYI, when you have a proposed project that came directly from your proposed project list, it is only going to have state and Senate or Assembly and Senate in there. US congressional is included, so you're going to have to add that. And I know we have a raised hand. I'm just going to finish this one last thing, and then I'll open it up to some questions in here for submittal purposes, okay? Because I know we only have about 30 minutes left. So save and continue. And it says no longer RMRA funded is my priority status for procurement operational needs. And what we're going to say is, you know, the products were on back order and project is delayed for an undetermined. Or for the foreseeable future. I can spell, just not right now, because I'm in front of everybody typing. Okay, and so that's what we put in there, right? So it's been removed. So now I'm in my project reporting page. There's nothing else for me to select. Show projects complete. I have nothing else, right? So now I want to come back to reporting. I'm going to hit manage expenditure report. And what you're going to see here is that I have my City of Torrance projects in here. In the expenditure report, everything is green except for this one, and it has a little yellow triangle in it with an exclamation point. And so what I want to do is go in here, make sure that that's what's selected, that's what gets end up by being grayed out, and I'm going to hit expand. I reported on 3 projects. I should be seeing 3 projects. My total amount in there should be 2.5, and that is what I'm seeing in my expenditures. So technically, I could submit. So let's see. I'm going to hit submit. If it was not going to allow me to submit because there was an error, I wouldn't even see this button. This wouldn't let me know that. I would get an error message instead, and I wouldn't be able to do that. So, and I can hit cancel if I want, or I can hit submit, and it'll verify that it is submitted. For the purposes of right now, I'm just going to hit a cancel button because I want you to show down below. So let's say you ever get locked out, knocked out, whatever happens in the middle of your reporting process. If you come down here to this manage page, make sure that you have the correct report selected. You select project reporting, and let's say you still had a list of projects that still need to be reported on. They would all appear here on this page. I'm going to hit the back button. If you have a project that you needed to add, because let's say now I deleted one of my projects. I could add an additional project now if I needed to. And I would just come in here and add in all the information that you've already seen on everything else and report on it as you did with everything else that you've already done. So It's really simple. You get your options to identify all of these things, which are deemed the eligible project types. You've got the type of component of projects, which is pre-construction, construction. If you're funding both pre-construction and construction with this project, you could identify that. Procurement operational needs. So this is where you're going to do, like, if you're only paying for like your admin costs for specific public works, you're paying for your own labor force to perform paving maintenance, all of that. This is where you're going to find that, and that's what you would be selecting. And based on what you select is going to have the relatable project descriptions are then going to appear. If I don't scroll through everything super fast. And so then you can scroll up and down and you're going to find everything that's as relatable as possible. And if you guys have more things that are way more common that you would say qualifies procurement and operational, let us know. You know, and because if we can update this, we will update this in future years and just make sure that we're keeping things as accurate as possible. So I'm going to go back to reporting. I just skipped out of that. I know I had hit add new project. I don't see that project here because I didn't hit save, I didn't hit submit. Let's just make sure I didn't mess anything up, okay? So now I'm gonna go to view expenditure reports. I went through that super fast, like call me Flash. Here we go, view expenditure report projects. Period, the one that we're currently working on, we're gonna hit apply. I still only see 3 projects. Good deal. All right, I didn't mess anything up. There's nothing in here that now should cause me any issues to be able to submit my report. So I'm going to go in here again, making sure I've selected the correct report. I'm going to hit submit. It's allowing me to now hit the submit for a secondary time. This is sort of your checkpoint. And now what you see over here is a little blue clock at the very top, and that's telling you it's with us for review. Had anything been off, had anything not been consistent and not been, you know, had that 2.5 not matched the 2.5 I entered in here, and I'm talking like by the cent of amount expended, it would not have let me submit. It would have caused an error. If I had a project that had been partially reported on and then closed out after I had saved the first page, but then I didn't save the status page that had the schedule and cost amount in it, it would have caused an error and we would have had to track down where that is. So just those are the things to kind of know. So now we're gonna open it up to questions. And I know that we have a lot of them. So do we have anybody on? Okay.
Ziad Masboudi, you are unmuted and free to ask your question.
Dad, are you there?
Rafael Casillas, you're unmuted and free to ask your question.
Yes, good afternoon or good morning again. Just curious, you know, with these projections and numbers, with inflation costs and the numbers coming in all over the place with these projects, you know, as we go through and provide these lists, they're becoming kind of obsolete even year to year. Is there going to be some kind of button that we can press to say, okay, we had to remove X, Y, and Z because of inflation?
Yeah, so that's going to be that no longer RMRA funded that you see down here at the bottom.
Yes.
I'll hit that no longer RMRA funded. When you select that right here, you can actually put the reason why it's no longer RMRA funded. You can put that in there. And if that's something that you guys are all experiencing across the board, or whoever is experiencing the issue with the inflation, and that's kind of why I cracked the joke of, you know, estimates are drastically being, you know, lower than what the actual costs end up by being right now, because of the climate that we're currently in. where you have your RMRA activity, like let's say you spent a ton of money, but on only 1 or 2 projects that traditionally would have gotten you like 3 or 4 projects done, right? You could identify that. You could say we've had to reduce our list because of the cost of inflation and the limited labor available to perform. And you can put that there in the RMRA activity. This is really your place to create the narrative for your jurisdiction to tell your story. Like data can tell so much, but we don't want to assume anything based on what the data is showing us, right? We want you guys to also let us know in your words what's happening. And that's
Okay,
the
so using that as an example, so let's say we narrowed the list down from like 5 to 3, and then we still have 2 that are on that on the approved ordinance or resolution that we generally submit. Do we have to do a new resolution for when we go forward with the other 2 in a couple of years out, or can we still use the same?
You have to do so. If you're still going to use those two projects, if you're not adding new projects in the next year, right, for eligibility, you don't have to include those 2 in there, right? You don't have to readopt the same projects every year if those projects are not using that eligibility year's funds, okay? But you do have to take action to be eligible every single year. Like no matter what, you have to have a project list there and you have to go forward to be eligible. And what I hear you asking is, do we have to readopt those same projects again if they haven't been performed yet, if they haven't been delivered yet? Or can we just, keep going, or do we add new projects in? Is that right? Or are you asking, like, do we still have to go in for eligibility in general?
Yes, no, that is correct. So and that helps with the clarification. So let's assume that occurred, then going into this year when we put in the ordinances or resos for the upcoming year, we'll make a new reso with just the 2 projects that are now slated for this current or this upcoming year. But
Yeah, and that's what you could do. But like, we have some people who said like, oh, we're forecasting out projects, or we're reserving funds for these projects, and we have to reserve multiple years of funds to deliver these projects. And so don't add new projects to that resolution. You're just going to keep readopting the same projects because you're literally building up a fund source to deliver it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anybody else? All right, we've got quite a few. This is your guys' time to ask questions, and then like our last 5-10 minutes, we'll go into the frequently asked questions field.
Lisette Melendez, you are unmuted and free to ask your question.
Hi, my question was, I'm reporting 21, 22. I'm in the CalSmart, but it looks like the year before for 2021 was carried over. And if I completed a project that cost way more than last year's and also that carried over, can I use the whole amount? Can I put down in my total cost for 21, 22, whatever my fund balance is?
When you say your fund balance, do you mean like your remaining fund of RMRA funds, or are you talking about, because what the total cost should be is what is the total cost of a project?
Well, so my project, just to give you an example, my total cost for the project was $50,000, right? But we only get about $5,000 per fiscal year. So right now, because last year we kind of carried over, we have a balance of $10,000.
Okay.
Could I report the total fund balance under this same project?
As being spent?
Yes, because the project that I completed is way more than that.
As long as that's what your finance team recorded as your spent amount, it's as long as that's what was spent, then yeah, that's fine. But it has to have actually been spent, because remember, you're also sending this same information of how much you spent in RMRA funds to the State Controller's Audits Division in your annual Streets and Roads report. And if like you have a big differential of saying like you only spent 5,000 according to them in RMRA funds in the fiscal year, but then to us you're doubling that, and that because that's not what actually happened, or it wasn't the actual spent amount, but you're just seeing here that you have the additional funds, like you don't want to do that. So as long as that's how much you spent, that's fine. There's no issues with that. Just accurately report what you spent. And if that's what's eligible and available to you to spend, and your finance team is going to say, okay, this is how we're going to code this in, and we're going to attribute it all to RMRA, that's totally fine.
Okay, so I just have to make sure to check with finance to make sure that it shows that same way on their end.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Of course. All right, we got anybody else? Yep.
Rafael Casillas, you're unmuted and free to ask your question.
Yeah, I already asked mine earlier. Thank you.
Okay, this question comes in from our questions chat. So do we report the unrealized gains and losses under the interest amount?
Send me in more detail about that. That is something that we usually kind of discuss with the SCO, the State Controller's Office, because from what they say, they don't require that being a part of the required reporting for them on annual Streets and Roads, at least as I recall. And so we don't require that, and we don't ask for you to put that in there because we don't really have a good way to attribute it, right? And because that fluctuates so much, we don't want that impacting in realistically cash in hand that you have available to you. So I'm going to say I'm not commenting, or I can't give you a specific answer on that right now, but that's something I think that we can work towards together, reaching out to the State Controller's Office for greater clarification. All right, so we don't see any additional questions being asked at this time. So I'm going to I'm going to jump into our frequently asked questions here. And it's, why are we being asked to record the interest? And this is, the interest accrued stems from a specific funding source that has specific eligible use criteria, and therefore the interest accrued must be spent as intended by statute. This means that if you have interest that's directly related to the RMRA funds, it can only be used for RMRA eligible purposes and therefore reported out on as such. How do you want us to report interest that was accrued in previous fiscal years? And again, so a field was created to allow for you to simply enter in the interest amount you weren't able to capture previously. And if you can't separate them out or you don't already do so, that's fine. And you can just enter it all in under 1 year, right? Like we've already kind of discussed that. It's laid out in there. It just, as long as it's captured one way or another, as long as that's captured in your eligible and in available RMRA funding, that's really what's important. Again, how do I continue project reporting if I exit CalSmart? We've already kind of covered this, but when you go back to your manage expenditure reports page, and you've already created your initial report, you're only allowed to create one, right? So once you've created your report, you go back to the dashboard page, you select manage, and you go in there, make sure that the correct report for that fiscal year has been identified, select project reporting, and then you can get in there and identify any project that has not yet been accounted for. It's going to have like a little checkbox or select area next to it, update, whatever it is, and you're going to go in and continue to report. We keep our HUDA and RMRA funds in the same account. How are we supposed to separate out the interest? And this is directly from the state controller's office. And this is why I said, like, we rely on the state controller's office. We are not a finance department. That is not what the CTC does. We write program policy and we do oversight for accountability, the transparency aspect of it. We interpret the legislation and how it applies to you for our funding programs. And that's our wheelhouse. We do not do finance. So we refer and defer to the state controller's office for their guidance. And per the SEO, local agencies should have some established methodology with regards to interest earnings allocations. Many calculate interest on a quarterly, some on a monthly basis, and allocate based on a fund's cash balance averages. So there you go. And if a local agency's RMRA is within either a road fund or gas tax fund for reporting and accounting purposes, they can calculate the RMRA's share of the interest proportionate to RMRA's balance. So I leave that up to you finance people to interpret and apply accordingly. A project was reported as in progress in the prior fiscal year and has since been completed. Can I report that, or do I need to create a new project? And I don't care how many times that we do this and we show all of this and it's all outlined and it's already in there and you can just select and keep reporting. We get this exact same question every single time. And so that is just, if the project was not relisted in the reporting fiscal year, you're going to skip project linking, right, from the prior year. You're going to skip project linking in the proposed list, and you're just going to continue to report. So you're selecting update, report, update the project detail if needed. So that's your scope, your location, your schedule, whatever needs to be updated. And then, so as you see, that first page is all description, location, the congressional district, state, legislative, and then it also has the additional elements portion, right? It's the next page that you have to go into that's going to have your status, that has your schedule and your funding information and all of that. That's going to need to be updated. What can be updated for a project reported as in progress in the last year? So again, most of that project detail pertaining to that title, description, location, etc., it's all going to be eligible for update, right? Project status, completion schedule, additional RMRA funds, spent future RMRA funds dedicated for reimbursement, all of that, again, still available to update. What you cannot update is going to be like the component that you had previously spent the funds on, right? Like you're not going to be able to change how that appears from a prior year. You're not going to be able to change the previously reported RMRA funds spent on that project. You cannot adjust that from a prior year. You cannot adjust the project start date from the prior year. All of that is set in stone. It is locked and in the system. That cannot be adjusted. Our finance department says the payments received July and August can't be counted towards the reporting fiscal year because we received them in the current fiscal year cycle. Is that true? I don't have to go into too much detail, but again, no, send them to us, send them to the state controller's office if they don't believe you with this answer and you show them this slide and they still say that's inaccurate. Don't worry. We'll go ahead and discuss with them exactly why that is accurate and why they have to include the July and August. And again, there are letters on the state controller's office website under prior years apportionment year-to-date information that says and instructs finance departments to account for it this way. So frequently asked questions, is there anything that can't be changed on a project reported as complete? And what we can say is that you should not be changing any of the project detail previously entered. It should have everything locked. It is supposed to have everything locked, but you know what? It's technology and not everything works the way it's supposed to. So if for some reason any of that is adjustable to you, just ignore that temptation to change it in any way and just keep it untouched and go into additional into the field for the status and report any of your cost information. Everything else, like date, location, like everything, and your outputs, outcomes, all of that's going to be locked down, and it should be locked down. And if it's not, like, again, let us know. There are wonky things every once in a while that happen to the site, but overall, consistently, none of that should be touched. Only your additional costs and RMRA funds spent and the overall total cost should be adjusted if needed. A project was delivered using RMRA funds, but the jurisdiction was later reimbursed for emergency repairs due to fire or flood. How can we reflect that? Oh man, so this has happened a lot, especially like during the years of like floods and rock slides, and oh man, this has caused a lot of issues, right? Fire, floods, all that. So usually what it is like, if you're gonna go for your federal or emergency reimbursement for emergency work, sometimes it's gonna be a cap of like 75%, right? 75% of that total project cost is gonna get reimbursed. And the minimum amount that you're gonna have to spend is 25% from other funding sources. If that is the case, I recommend not reporting more than 25% of that total project cost that is eligible for reimbursement. Like, don't go over that if you're going to report that your funds have been spent on that at all. Because what we can do is always add additional RMRA funds to be spent on that if you don't get your full reimbursement amount, or you get denied reimbursement and you have to add more RMRA to it. We cannot subtract from that from a prior reporting year and then put that back in your bank. Like that doesn't work. So it's safer to underreport if you have to in the case of potential reimbursement or match. And then just always come to us and ask us questions directly if you have these things too, if you need to. If future fiscal year RMRA apportionments have been dedicated for reimbursement of the other funds spent in a reporting fiscal year, would those funds be counted as RMRA funds spent? No, they don't show up. They don't reduce your RMRA amount that it shows that you had available for spend. It doesn't record as you spending it. It just tells us that you advanced the project and you're intending to reimburse yourself using RMRA funds from a future year. And so we kind of know that that's the intention for the project, but it's not going to show displayed anywhere else other than to us, because we may get questions, right? Because you're not reporting out anywhere else that you're, this just kind of helps us identify what projects are being advanced with the intention of being spent with RMRA funds. So where can I find the amounts that we received? Again, this is all in there. This is also in our resource tab. This is also going to be laid out in your slide-by-slide handouts that you have. So you have all of that. Where can we find the amount that we were estimating to receive? Again, same place. These are just old screenshots, but like it's going to be current for the current year. But the links are completely accurate, and the bullets are pretty consistent, just the fiscal years change. And here are all of your resources. You have the CTC's main website, local streets and roads program, CalSmart, the streets and highways code sections that are applicable to the program, state controller's office website, the Division of Audits and their specific email for the RMRA Local Streets and Roads Fund program, and their telephone number, the local government services divisions for apportionments. Just make these people your best friend. California State Association of Counties, the League of California Cities, as well as the California Local Government Finance Almanac. They are a third party. They do the estimates. They're third party contracted out by the League of California Cities. And they're the ones that do these finance estimates. It's not a state agency. So like we don't hold anybody to those estimates. It's a good place for you guys to start from when you're coming up with your proposed project list. But we can't, like they're not set in stone. We don't tell you to bank on anything. My advice always is to adjust 3 to 5% up and down so that you're ready for it should there be a drop or adjustment in the positive or negative in your annual apportionments that you receive. So that is it for today. We'd like to thank you. In the coming days, we will have this training made available and posted online. It'll be on the commission website under the local streets and roads page and under our training tab. If you have any questions, please contact the LSR website, and you know, we look forward to hearing from you and reviewing your expenditure reports and are happy to assist in any way that we can. I'm going to leave the workshop active on CalSmart, or not on CalSmart, on GoToWebinar, so that you can go ahead and download any of the handouts that you haven't already downloaded. Again, thank you for your morning. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your dedication to following through and participating in our trainings so that you can have the most accurate reporting possible and positive experience with us. All right, guys, have a great day.